So for a given vector, we know it has an initial point and a terminal point. So the initial will be the point, and then the terminal will be the arrow, the terminal point. And there's a couple ways to add vectors. So let's say if they share the same terminal point, or the same initial point, like this. So this dot here represents the initial point. For this, you would have to use the parallelogram law. So you would make another vector. So let's call this A. Let's call this vector B. You would have to make a parallelogram. So think of it like you're copying it over. So you're making another copy of A and another copy of B. And then, to get your vector, you have to connect the diagonal. Okay, so this diagonal would represent the sum of A and B. So if we look at another example, let's say if you have vector u and vector v, u plus v is just going to be the diagonal vector. Well, first we have to draw the parallelogram. And so just connect it down like this. This will be your sum. So parallelogram law is when they both have the initial point together. What happens if they don't? What if it's like initial to a terminal? So let's look at an example. So we'll have vector A, vector B. Instead of making a parallelogram, you're going to have to make a triangle. So you just connect these two vectors like this. So this is called a triangle law. And basically it connects initial point to terminal, initial to terminal. Okay. So let's look at another example. Let's say if I have vector u, I have vector v. So vector u, vector v, then the sum of u plus v is u forming a triangle. So you know you're going to have to form a triangle because it's initial to terminal, initial to terminal. You're going to have to form a triangle. Now, you have to be careful about where the arrow goes. So just think of this as like connect the initial with the final. You know, this was your starting point right here. And you want to connect it to the end. When u, v, the end was here. So you want to go towards the end there. So you started here, you drew v, you stopped and said, okay, what is u plus v? Well, connect the start and the finish. Let's do another one. Let's say this is A, this is B, this is my start point, this is my finish. And so A plus B is just you drawing from the start to the finish. So it'll just be this diagonal right here. All right, now let's just look at another thing for the triangle law. What if we're subtracting? So technically you could also do a parallelogram law with it, but let's look at an example using the triangle law. So for example, let's say we go to u, we go down to negative, down to negative v. If I want u minus v, that's the same thing as u plus negative v. So I'm technically adding, I should put that in quotes, adding these two vectors. All right, so this is my start, this is my finish, connect those two. This will be u minus v. Now let's look at an example where we have the same initial point. So let's say we have this initial point, call it V, and call this W. I want to make a triangle here. Okay, So I know if I were to add these two, so I'm going to put this on the side, because they share the same initial point, you would have to use the parallelogram law and just connect these two, like connect the diagonals basically. So that will be your sum v plus w. But here I want to connect these two. So there's going to be two things here. So one being, should I put the arrow up or should I put the arrow down? And let's look at the two differences. So whenever you connect it like this, when they share the same initial point, whenever you connect it, you're always going to be subtracting these two vectors. But you have to be careful about what you subtract. So I have v and w. Notice that this vector goes towards v. You see how it's going up? V is going up. So is this vector here. So v should be positive. And then w is going to be negative. Versus if it was going down, like this, we know v is going up. So this is going down. It's going the opposite direction of v. So that's going to have negative v plus w. So that's going to be our answer. Now let's look at two or more vectors. So let's say we have vector A, vector B, and vector C. Okay. First, let's look at A plus B. Well, for A plus B, this is my start. This is my finish because they have initial to terminal. So you're going to connect them like this, from start to finish. Make that line, A plus B. Next, we'll do B plus C. Start at B. B starts over here. And then you go B plus C. C, this is where you end or finish. So connect the start with the finish right there. B plus C. Okay, now I'm going to look at A plus B plus C. So let's do a different color. So A plus B plus C, start at A, end at C. So this will be start, go to B, so A, go to B, go to C. So I'm going to finish here. So connect the start with the finish, up like that. Okay, so this would be A plus B plus C.